Hey, everybody, and welcome to our topic today that we're going to be covering on Agentic AI. We really hope that you're doing well as you join us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be joining from across the world. I know we have a number of people from different countries outside of Singapore, where I'm located, that had registered for today, so we welcome you. Today's topic is one that we've gotten a lot of inquiries on lately. In fact, I'll kind of give you the history of how we came to this topic in a moment. As you know, the title of today's session is on Agentic AI, something that we'll define and unpack. And the subtitle, What Happens When AI Acts on Its Own. That's a direction that Agentic AI is going in education, but as you'll see, it isn't quite there yet. In case I have not had the chance to meet you before, in case we've not been on a session like this or in a workshop before, let me give you a super brief introduction to who I am. My name is Jim Wagstaff. I'm one of the co-founders of Noodle Factory. We are an AI teaching assistant platform. I'm based in Singapore, as you heard. But where I come to this topic is from multiple angles. If you're coming to this subject from workplace learning, this is where I do a lot of work through Up to Speed, the Global Technology Industry Association, or GTIA. I'm on the executive council there. And in fact, I head up the special interest group on AI, and with a specific interest and emphasis on AI in the workplace. Also, I do teach a course on the application of innovative uses of technology through Singapore Management University. I work with the Principals Academy around teacher development, professional development, and I'm on the faculty of the American Association of Colleges and Universities AI Institute. So I'm kind of hitting all of these angles: workplace learning, higher education, primary and secondary education. I think about this in different ways, and we'll try to touch on each one of those angles today. There's my contact information. I'll share that at the end of today's session as well. In addition to, let me go ahead and share it right now. I was going to say at the end, I'll share a QR code to an educator network that we have. But in case you don't make it all the way to the end of today's session, here is that QR code and URL that will take you to the AI Educator Network. This is a birds of a feather group of like-minded educators. And if you're interested in just having the conversation around best practices, what everyone's doing in this space, regardless of the specific discipline or topic that you are into, you'll probably find some like-minded educators in this network. So would encourage you to join that. And I will flash up these again at the end of today's session. But let's talk about our topic of Agentic AI. This is becoming a buzz phrase, almost irritatingly so. If you have AI fatigue to begin with, well, Agentic AI, if you're new to it, you will hear a lot of it after you become more aware of it today. Imagine asking an AI tool or platform to plan a workshop instead of just giving you tips or giving you content, or to actually schedule rooms or contact participants, remind participants. This is kind of the vision for Agentic AI. In simple terms, this is about systems who have agency. That's where the agentic part of this comes up comes in. So they can make certain decisions and take actions independently within parameters to achieve a certain goal, rather than just responding to a prompt. So in other words, Agentic AI is like having a proactive digital assistant that can, in certain ways, reason or make some educated assumptions or inferences with minimal guidance. Now, this is getting a lot more attention in the workplace, particularly with entry-level jobs. You've probably seen some of the recent headlines. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, made some pretty interesting comments, I'll put it that way, that got a lot of headlines around how he believes that 50% of entry-level jobs in the white-collar space are going to be going away soon because of not just the first glimpses of agentic AI, but as we move closer towards what is called artificial general intelligence, where AI has the characteristics of human intelligence, then those entry-level jobs become less compelling for organizations to hire for. But that's not really the topic that we're after today. We specifically want to look at education and how agentic AI is becoming more prevalent in education. This is one of the topics. If you look at the horizon for AI in education, this is one of a few things that are getting a lot of interest, a lot of attention, both in the media, but also just in practice. Some of these things are a little bit further out. Things like no code, low cost text to AR, VR, XR, so extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality. We're starting to see early applications of this. High fidelity video, animation, those sorts of things that are suitable in their accuracy for STEM teaching. You've probably seen the most recent demonstrations of Google's VO3 from their I/O conference. So there were a lot of really compelling things that came out of there from a video perspective, and demonstrations of the use of video with even dialogue and music, and just amazing things that have a lot of interesting applications in education. There are early stage physical or holographic teaching assistants. These could be physical robots or holographs of teaching assistants for use in the classroom that are getting some attention. And one of the things that we've talked about in previous live streams, universal design for learning at scale through generative AI output uh, and input from teachers and from students. So these are things that are emerging that we're not going to touch on today, but they might be useful for future topics. For our topic on agentic AI, where we're going to be spending our time is really, if you think of this, the analogy of GPS or navigation more broadly, we're somewhere in between level 3 and level 4 when it comes to agentic AI in education. So yeah, we're way beyond the paper map where everything is essentially coded in or set in stone. The way that we use AI, we're beyond even sat nav, where this would have been maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. The use of AI to generate content or even to engage students. More recently, it's been analogous to live traffic GPS, where as traffic changes, traffic patterns change with a GPS, we're rerouted. So we've been seeing some of that with generative AI in the classroom and with students. I think a great example of that in the classroom is the use of role plays and things where, with some basic guidance, each student has a very different experience based on the unique interaction that they have with an AI. And we're starting to move towards, for the teacher and the student, or the learner and the facilitator in a workplace context, this idea of a self-driving autopilot. That's the dream or the nightmare, depending on your perspective. We're not there yet. We're kind of moving beyond level 3, where this idea of agency on the part of an AI is beginning to take hold, and we're starting to see some of this in practice. So think about your own experience. Think about the last 7 days, and maybe pop this into the comment space, the chat space in the window. If you're watching this over YouTube, have you personally used an AI agent? Very importantly, an agent in the last 7 days, and we're using the word agent in the same way that we defined agentic AI, where there's some agency. That might have been for a travel reservation. That might have been for maybe some sort of financial transaction, or it could have been for in the classroom, maybe a role play. Maybe you were using deep research as a part of one of the general purpose generative AI platforms like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. There is some agency that you can give these tools now. So go ahead and pop that into the chat window. We'll keep an eye on that. One of the things to understand about why agentic AI is getting so much attention is the speed of adoption. Agentic AI is very, very new, relatively speaking, but if you look at the years it's taken to reach 50% adoption, and here we're really focused on developed economies, those that have a high penetration of digital access. So it took 20 years to get to 50% adoption for the PC, the personal computer, 12 years for the internet once the internet was commercialized. For smartphones, it was much faster, 6 years. And for generative AI, it is actually less than 3 years if you use the launch of ChatGPT as the point in time where this was essentially available to everyone. So you notice what's happening is it's roughly half the time between each iteration of these major technology inflection points. So if we use that same sort of calculation, the agentic AI, it, very broadly speaking, we should probably see 50% adoption at least in the next year and a half, maybe as little as a year. So that is why this is getting so much attention, not just the functionality, but also the speed of adoption. We're sort of in a ready-made environment for a speedy adoption of agentic AI because so many of us are using generative AI at home and at work. So let's spend just a minute on this and understand agentic AI at a slightly deeper level. So we've already talked about there's some agency here on the part of the AI, even without artificial general intelligence. So what this is allowing us to deploy are these semi-autonomous AI systems that can pursue goals around which we've given some parameters without any constant human direction or control. So don't think of that as science fiction. So this is not something we necessarily need to worry about at this point, as long as we're giving the right guidance and directions. These agents can handle relatively complex multi-step processes and problems, and they have a deeper level of contextual understanding. Much of that comes from our interaction with them, and the memory, that's a very important component of agentic AI about those interactions. It goes much deeper than we've experienced before. Just to give you a sense of that, the earliest versions of ChatGPT, they had a memory of maybe 7 or 8 steps or 7 or 8 turns in the conversation. But now, even a tool like ChatGPT, if you're using the free version, but certainly the Plus or Pro versions of that tool, they have a very deep memory, and you can commit interactions to memory. And as a part of the agency that you give that AI for your work or potentially for education, if you're allowing students to engage maybe a GPT that you've created, that memory is much, much deeper. And so this allows them to make more informed decisions on their own. If you think about some of the key differences beyond what I've just touched on, generative AI content is based on those specific human prompts that we engineer. Agentic AI does not mean that prompt engineering is a skill that becomes unnecessary. In fact, it may be even more important because we need to give those really clear directions, clear guidance to these agents to make sure that we get done what we want, especially on the first try. So with agentic AI taking these independent actions, we can think of this as certainly a workplace partner, an assistant. For our purposes, we've been talking about the use of AI in Noodle Factory as a teaching assistant for a long time. But for students, we can also think of this as a learning partner, capable of some autonomous engagement, maybe Socratic engagement, problem solving across different domains, cross-curricular engagement. So there's a great deal of potential for agentic AI in education, not just for ourselves and doing administrative tasks or content creation, but for students. So why this matters so much right now is important to understand as well. So in this rapidly evolving technological landscape, and this is an area that is moving extremely fast. Week to week, you see significant changes. The use of agentic AI is becoming increasingly apparent. In every tool, you're starting to see agency or the ability to deploy these tools with a semi-autonomous approach becoming more and more apparent and more transparent. So these personalized experiences, these enhancements of human-machine collaboration, it's really important that we understand this in order to not only take advantage of it, but also to guard against things that might get in the way of learning. If you're going to use agentic AI, especially when you deploy AI to students, it's really important to remember that, and sorry for the the C3PO and R2D2 analogies here. These are not your parents' polite droids who are dutifully waiting for your instructions. So uh, the if we're thinking that this is R2D2 with a teaching credential, where it observes, it decides, and takes action on our behalf, there is some of that, but this is sort of a new baseline that learners will expect, that these sorts of tools are not just simply waiting there and waiting for an instruction, but they're proactive. I think that's a key point to remember. In our own personal lives, and you can think of this in different ways, if I look at the way that OpenAI has deployed this, they have a service called Operator. You can get to this within ChatGPT. Um, I can use this as an assistant and check for duplicate files in a file folder, a Google Drive folder in this case. Um, I'll show you in a moment that you can make ChatGPT with the Plus and the Pro versions of that tool aware of your emails, your Microsoft Teams communications, your Dropbox, SharePoint, Google Drive information, where you can actually set that operator or that deep research assistant off on a quest to do something for you in the context of where you work. So your workspace, whether that's a Microsoft workspace or a Google workspace. And here you can see in just a few seconds, this has gone through and done something that probably would have taken me, I don't know, in this case maybe 30 or 40 minutes. It has worked for 2 minutes, and it has found some potential duplicates, and I could have given it some autonomy and said, well, when you find duplicates, delete the older version of the duplicate, or flag it for me for deletion, something like that. The other thing that you probably have seen and maybe played around with is the ability to create very simple GPTs. And here again, I'm using the OpenAI version of a GPT creator. I'm just demonstrating the concept of memory here. So I'm coming back to this agent and I'm asking, hey, where did we leave off? And here I was doing some work on prompt engineering and prompt engineering training. And so it remembers that. It gives me some information on that. In this case, I've created a little GPT that is a tutor on prompt engineering, and it's called NaggyBot. And what it's able to do is it's able to be very proactive with me. It can remind me if I haven't spent time on something, or in this case, I'm saying, hey, can you put that on my calendar? Can you remind me on my calendar tomorrow at 2 p.m.? And that's where I'll pick this up. So if you think about these examples and how different that is from what we're used to today, think about on this screen the top 10 things that we're probably using generative AI for today, whether that's designing content or acting as a coach for learners or employees, integrating with different learning tools, supporting a reflective practice, maybe helping to organize and track learning. So these are things that generative AI can do with a lot of direction today. But as we move forward, these are the things that, and we're not talking about years here, we're probably talking about quarters, but let's say just conservatively, if we're having this conversation next year, the ability to design fully personalized learning pathways with only a little bit of guidance, or to engage in emotionally intelligent dialogue. You see this in certain ways with the advanced voice functionality in a lot of tools. And this is something that in Noodle Factory we're already working with, is having more emotionally engaging, more emotionally intelligent dialogue as a Socratic tutor with students. That will become much, much deeper. The ability to run autonomous training, so to really act like a facilitator, not replacing humans, but maybe for breakouts, for exercises, for post-workshop or flipped classroom exercises, to really run training and to guide students or learners through exercises, to drive certain human AI co-discovery of different pedagogical insights. So to act as maybe an augmentation of an instructional designer or a learning consultant. So when you run your eyes down this list of things, this is where we're quickly going to now transition or evolve to in the use of generative AI in our work. So I thought what we could do is maybe take a look at a couple of examples from different types of disciplines. So we'll start with primary and secondary classrooms. We'll then look at higher education, and then we'll look at workplace learning. I think one of the biggest things that we have an opportunity to do in primary and secondary education, but I think this would extend to every type of education, is how can we keep students out of passenger mode? So passenger mode is a mode of student engagement, or lack of engagement, more specifically, where they're probably flying a little bit under the radar screen. They may be making decent grades, but the student is sort of checked out. They're checked out of the learning pathway that we want them to be on. So I'll give you a couple of examples of a primary or secondary school type of a use case where we could maybe use agentic AI in interesting ways. So imagine if we've got a student who is, maybe they've stared at an algebra problem for more than 3 minutes. And after 3 minutes, the AI agent knows to step in, and the student receives a whisper. That could be a voice whisper, or it could be a text prompt with a Socratic hint, and this helps them to navigate towards a solution. So here's a really good example of something that we can do right now, but not in this way that is so proactive, not, say, after a period of time or after maybe a certain number of struggles that a student has. What we're going for here is we want to get rid of the "I hate algebra" grumbles, and we want to see those drop by the end of the term, because this is a way that every student could have a Socratic tutor, a study buddy right alongside them, not just in algebra, but in any subject where we see students disengaging or getting into passenger mode. They're doing okay, but they could do better in terms of really feeling that they want to move forward. Think about this in terms of language learning. So we can do this in certain ways now, but imagine having an intelligent tutor where, potentially via a headset, the AI is listening as students read aloud, and they're getting prompts around pronunciation, and maybe they're celebrated by giving more of a level up, Pokemon style, as they move through and they get better in terms of their reading, their pronunciation, and potentially even different types of comprehension. But doing that in a very proactive way, and remembering, very importantly, the progress that students have made. Here's another example. So possibly for older students, so think maybe secondary students, what about enhanced project-based learning using agents? So being able to nudge the group along their timelines, spotting and intervening on things like cyberbullying. If you've got a group working together, maybe in a forum or a Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom setting, being able to spot negative behaviors and intervene on that, or alert the teacher, or both. So really being proactive in each forum or each group that's running a project, and proactively engaging and providing that sort of support. We can do a little bit of that today, but this is about much more autonomy and engaging the group in that much more autonomous way. So I think you're starting to see a trend here in my comments about where we're going in agentic AI. This is not a light switch step function. It's really a gradual evolution from what we've known today to the sorts of things that we talked about earlier, this list of things where we're going. It is very much of a piece with the sort of work that we've been doing already. So in that sense, it should be very positive. This is not something net new, but it is essentially evolved into something better. Let's look at a couple of higher education examples, some innovations or evolution that we may be seeing here. Here again is something that we can do today relatively well, adapting syllabi. So maybe we've got a 20-page syllabus, and instead of just summarizing that or allowing students through their own prompts to explore that, what if each student was handed a personalized revision calendar, all before the coffee queue has had a chance to clear up on the first day of classes, that really is tailored to them, because there's an element of memory on how the students did in the previous term, the sorts of preferences, maybe the sorts of roadblocks or barriers that they tend to run into in their study. So this, in addition to being proactive and nudging students along, is one example of where agentic AI can really be interesting. This is also something that we're working on in Noodle Factory, is the ability to really personalize that engagement, that experience that students have, and the reminders, the nudges that students get at certain times in the term to keep them moving forward. Here is something that we're doing a lot of work a lot of work around in Noodle Factory, and that is this concept of unlimited office hours in higher education. We have a number of educators who have lots of information about their area of expertise that students can draw on, but we need a channel, we need a means for that to occur. And so, using Agentic AI, this is where students can get help anytime at any hour. That it's that 2 a.m. teaching assistant where students can go in and ask questions, engage as if they were engaging a virtual version of their instructor, their professor, their lecturer. Lecturers can benefit from this because it really streamlines the communication process. And the way that we do this in Noodle Factory, it's very visible and in control of the lecturer. So all of the conversations is visible there. The analytics around that, the summaries that lecturers receive. Think about, and here's a different way to look at it. Think about, instead of, as a lecturer with a large class, instead of sifting through 200 emails that might contain really nuanced information, imagine this sort of office hours AI assistant being able to sift through that, analyze that, provide you summaries, and give you insights on where interventions might need to take place versus where students have had everything taken care of. Think about also a research co-pilot. Again, something that we can do very well today through the use of prompts, but now tools are moving in a direction where agentic AI can really enhance the research experience. Now, this can be for both undergraduate and postgraduate students. For undergraduate students and for new graduate students, things like literature reviews can feel very daunting. So suggesting relevant literature, facilitating or even doing some training on complex data analysis, providing real-time feedback on research methodologies, all of these things that are really difficult for first-time researchers, if you will, the AI can act as a proactive assistant. Imagine also, at every level of higher education, having a research assistant that will, again, nudge you proactively along to make sure that you're hitting things at the right timeline in order to make sure that you don't have those last-minute panic attacks and race to the finish to try to get that research completed. And then finally, something that is certainly of a piece with what we've talked about already, proactive engagement, giving instructors, giving administrators also these early alert systems. So imagine an early alert agent that is able to look at things like logins or badge data, quiz data, forum activity, library usage. So all of those nuanced things that individually might not mean a whole lot, but collectively, if we were able to analyze that, maybe we spot disengaged students. Maybe we spot disengaged first-year students, which is a real problem, who might be those students that might be at risk of dropping out at the worst case, but also just becoming students who are in passenger mode, even though they're in higher education. So these proactive insights can trigger AI and human outreach that lower the risk of things like dropout or, at minimum, disengagement and passenger mode on the part of the learner. Okay, how about workplace learning? Let's look at a couple of examples. And here again, we in Noodle Factory, even though our focus is very much on higher education, on primary and secondary education, we do have a lot of workplace learning clients, and a couple of things that we're working on with some of our corporate clients. One of which is onboarding. So imagine having a day one new hire concierge AI agent that can help to automate certain key tasks. Maybe it schedules important meetings or briefings and reminds new employees about necessary paperwork. Maybe it helps them to check things off their to-do items, like customizing Zoom backgrounds or ensuring that they have some training and role play on presenting themselves during virtual meetings. Maybe these are young in career employees. So this sort of innovative approach can decrease ramp time and allow new hires to contribute more immediately, maybe right from day one. Here's another one where we're heavily involved with a number of our corporate clients. This is an example that's actually in production. This is the use of AI agents in sales environments where providing live support, like a job aid, where agents at the extreme can actually listen to ongoing calls. This is not something that we're directly involved in, but there are AI agents that can listen to ongoing calls and provide a whisper in the ear of a sales representative, customer success representative, a support representative, giving them tips at critical moments in that conversation. So this isn't just for sales professionals, but anybody who needs to remain engaged and effective when they're working maybe with clients, whether those are internal or external. This is the type of job aid that an agentic AI can really do well in by being proactive in providing guidance. Here's another example, one that we're heavily involved in with a number of our corporate clients, and it's role plays. We're seeing a huge uptake in role plays. So imagine you need to do some practice. So you maybe want a role play agent to step into the shoes, digitally speaking, of an unpredictable senior executive. You want to really get your pitch just right and tuned before the real meeting so that you can handle things like unexpected questions or objections or things that you just haven't thought about. Getting into the mind of that persona, if you will, is something that is really useful, and we're seeing a huge uptick, as I said, not only in the corporate space but even in education. So here's just a chart of what really does in the construct that we've just gone through makes agentic AI different from standard Gen AI. If you layer in everything that we've just said, so the goal-driven behavior, not just responding to prompts, but actually trying to accomplish something with us, very importantly, that's a key difference. The longer-term memory and the role continuity and handling that from session to session, not just within a session, this persistence of memory and the adaptation based on how we progress through the conversations is a key difference. Environmental awareness and a sense of time and a timeline is a key difference between what we have today and where we're going. We're somewhere in the middle on this today. Autonomous scenario evolution. So think the role play, being able to branch off based on choices or things that we say or don't say, introducing new characters or escalating the stakes. Maybe imagine a negotiation where things take an unexpected turn. So if you want to think of that, it's like this is a terrible analogy, but think of it like Dungeons and Dragons. Your AI assistant is like the dungeon master, not just an improv partner, but is actually creating the scenario as you go. So I'll give you one more example, and this is one that we're also involved in with a corporate client, and this has to do with certification tracking and coaching. So imagine being able to reconcile the things that are in your learning management system, your HR system, maybe that dusty Excel spreadsheet that has all of the certification info in it, and then quietly ping employees about qualifications or certifications or compliance that's about to lapse. So that's something that can be done, but it does require a bit of programming today. But here we're talking about just the ability to give simple language instructions in order to make that happen. So all of this can be done around a timeline that you specify and guardrails that you specify to make sure that people are prompted and nudged to recertify in plenty of time. So question on this, because I'm very interested in this, maybe put your answer to this question in the comment box or the chat window. Would you trust an AI agent to certify compliance training? So not just remind people, but where this is going. Would you trust an AI agent to actually be the facilitator or the agent of record, if you will, pun intended, to certify whether or not somebody has completed their compliance training? So maybe a yes or a no, and if you've got some other thoughts on that, just pop that into the comment window. I do have a very quick cautionary tale on this. This actually it's a pre-ChatGPT example, but I think it serves as a nice cautionary tale. It comes from 2019, so have a look at this. You might have heard about this story before. This comes from China, and as we know, in China there were And there continue to be a lot of really interesting things around the use of AI in the classroom. But many of them, including this headband that primary school students were asked to wear to monitor their attention spans, they were very controversial. In fact, this is something that's been halted, but it's an example of where agentic AI might go wrong and the sorts of things that we need to consider. So in this case, a headband was worn, and students, when their attention started to drift, that was noted, and teachers could step in. I'm not sure if there was any sort of alert that the student got, but this was something that was pretty controversial. Parents got quite upset about this, and it was eventually stopped. But you can imagine, everything that we've just described, there might be and there will be certain things that are controversial that will come up. So ethically, just one last thing to share here in terms of what we want to continue to think about. Hallucination does continue to be a problem. So even in the realm of agentic AI, we need to have that mantra of trust but verify. Not only in the testing and the run up to launch, but even during the launch, make sure that there's always a human in the loop where you can step in as needed, that you don't just set it and forget it. There are also privacy concerns. Agentic AI has a memory, and so those things that are stored in memory, we need to have a way to understand what is in memory and to potentially flush either all or parts of that memory if it becomes problematic, not only from a privacy perspective, but also from an operational or an outcome perspective. And then, as always, bias is a problem. So auditing the data sets, ensuring that we're moving towards greater equity is always a must. All right, so I know that was a kind of a rapid fire overview, which is what was the general ask for today, is just give us an overview of what's happening in this space, give us some things to think about. If you have thoughts or questions on this, I've got a couple of things that I want to share with you. We are in the Noodle Factory platform introducing a number of agentic AI features, and here's sort of a call to action for you. If you are interested in even beta testing, being an early user of some of these agentic features, we're going to put a link into the comment box right now. So Marilyn, if you could go ahead and just put a link into the comment box. If you would like to sign up to have early access to some of those features, go ahead and click on that link, and we will, as we launch those features, ask you to give it a try. And we're going to be looking for some feedback from you on those agentic AI features. Those might be in terms of proactive engagement, notifications, analysis of student engagement, role plays, the use of avatars, the use of proactive voice. So lots of different things that we are deploying very, very rapidly. So we'd love to get you involved in that if you're interested. Also, one of the things that we were asked for today is, if I want to stay up to speed on what's happening in this space, where are some areas that I can go? And this is not an exhaustive list, but for me, these are places where I, on a weekly basis, will just read or listen and kind of spend some time to understand where the industry is going, so to speak. So whether that's Axios or the New York Times podcast that's listed there, or TechPresso, EdTech Insiders has a great newsletter and podcast, and then also GSV, Claire Zhao publishes a weekly newsletter. All of these, amongst others, but these would be my top 5. I have a lot of time for these resources. So if you're interested in that, maybe check those out. And we'll put the links to each of those in the comment section, so you can check that out. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's topic. Again, there's my contact information. Would love to stay in contact with you. If you've got questions directly, please feel free to email me, or you can message me on LinkedIn. As I mentioned at the beginning of today's live stream, we have this AI Educator Network that we'd love to get you involved in, that Birds of a Feather group where we talk about best practices and share ideas. So please do feel free to join us there. And with that, we thank you for joining. Please make sure to hit that like button, to subscribe, to add in your comments, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on our next live stream. Thanks, everyone. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, if you found it useful, Please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the content that we publish on a weekly basis. Also, head over to our website at noodlefactory.ai. There's tons of free resources there that focus on teaching and learning with AI. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to stay involved. Join our community of practice and play, which is in our Facebook group, where we talk about really practical and useful approaches to using AI in teaching and learning. Until next time, happy noodling.